It's day 2 of Tashmas. Welcome to this special Tashmas episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 432, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/432. And you're going to want to come and check out the show notes of today's episode because it is day 2 of Tashmas. For those who aren't aware, every day from the 1st to the 12th of December, we have the 12 days of Tashmas on the podcast. There's a daily podcast episode and every day there's a present. And today I have a super fun present to share with you, which is a fabulous freebie. So in today's episode, I'm going to share with you what to do when something horrible happens in your business. And I have a free resource that's going to help you to reframe this challenge in your business as well. So let's dive in for day 2 of Tashmas. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. If you've only been in business for a short amount of time, you may have some fears about what might go wrong as a business owner. And regardless of how long you've been in business, I think we all still do have some fears about some of the bad things that might happen to us as business owners as a result of being a business owner. Now, some of those things that we might be afraid of may have already happened in the past, so we're afraid of them happening again. But in a lot of cases, those things haven't happened to us yet, so we can catastrophize what that might feel like or what the impact of that terrible thing happening may actually be. So what I wanted to share with you is 5 things that you can do when something horrible happens in your business. The first thing is to get some perspective. So I think when we are deep in our business and when our business is our livelihood, it's something that often is wrapped up in our identity, we can actually lose perspective about what's important and what is actually happening. So I think it's really powerful to just gain some perspective about what does this mean in the grand scheme of things. So let's say you make a mistake with a client and it means that you've had to redo a piece of work that you did for them, or they've asked you for a discount or a refund, or they've decided that they don't want to work with you anymore. In 10 years' time, when you look back at this mistake that you made, will you still have anxiety about the fact that you made that mistake? In most cases, the answer would be no. In most cases, you will be grateful for what you can learn from making that mistake. You can learn how to not make it in the future and you'll move on. And often the things that feel like they're big and they're hard and they're life-altering and they're so horrendous now will just be like water off a duck's back in 5 years' time. Sometimes you just need to remind yourself that what feels really hard today won't feel so hard 3 months from now. And often that best thing for your perspective is to look at what felt hard for you 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago. Because often we also need to go through some of those challenging things because we know that they're actually going to happen to us. They're a reasonable thing to happen as a business owner. So taking that helicopter view, taking a step back and just getting some perspective can be really helpful and can really help you to couch it in the perspective of the bigger picture as well. So that is tip number 1. That's idea number 1 of what you can do. Number 2, reach out to some biz besties. Because sometimes the things that feel really horrendous and horrible, and when you talk to people who aren't business owners, you explain and you say this horrible thing happened, and they also don't understand necessarily that that's just something that happens as business owners, or they don't necessarily have that bigger perspective as well. Now, an example of this that I have from the very early stages of my business was I actually had a virtual assistant in my second year of business. And she was a mean girl, right? She was a bit mean to me. I often put her up on a pedestal because she had been a VA to other business owners for like 5 years before I ever started my business. I looked to her for a lot of like advice, and she was a bit of a like a litmus test for me on whether something would fly, or, you know, she definitely wasn't just a business virtual assistant. Like, she did a lot of other things for me as well. And I really did look up to her for her experience and her time as a business owner as well, because I was still only in my second year as a business owner. But she was an absolute perfectionist, and she was quite cruel to me in that, for example, if I sent out an email and it had a spelling mistake in it, she'd be the first person to reply to my newsletter and say, "Oh my goodness, that is so embarrassing that you don't even know how to use the right there." And actually, in reflection, and once I had developed a bit more of a network of other business owners, and I also worked with some mentors and like was part of programs with other business owners, I could see that 100% of people in my mastermind had sent out an email with a spelling mistake before, and it hadn't broken their business. Like, it wasn't actually that big of a deal. I could see that, you know, most people whose mailing lists I was on had accidentally one day sent me a newsletter that said, "Hey, first name, blah, 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 blah," instead of actually saying my name. Everyone makes tech mistakes. Everyone makes little typos. Everyone has those little things going on in their business. But for me at that point in time, because I didn't have as strong of a network of business besties, I didn't actually have that perspective. The only perspective I had was that of a perfectionist VA whose job it was to look for all those teeny tiny little mistakes, whose job it was, like, if she, as the person who was proofreading emails or proofreading content that she was putting on the website or whatever, if she had let one slip through, I can see why it might have been more of an impact for her. It might have been more embarrassing for her because that's something she prided herself on. But in the grand scheme of things for me, like, that wasn't actually a big deal. Am I going to have less of an impact on people's ability to grow their business and their ability to create online programs, or their ability to attract and convert their ideal clients from online channels simply because I used the wrong version of your, or simply because I had a typo on something that I sent out to them? Like, it actually isn't that big of a deal. And so for me, the thing that's made a big difference, like, at the time, that was actually like really hard for me. I knew when I saw a spelling mistake in something that the first email I was going to get was from my VA, and that she was going to absolutely like tear me a new one and be like, "Oh, that's so embarrassing. Oh, you're so unprofessional," because that's how she spoke to me. And so it created this sense of like, oh, I have to triple check everything. Oh, right. But actually the big difference for me was getting some biz besties. So I was part of a business breakfast networking group, and I met some people through that I really loved and resonated with. And so we formed like a local mastermind group together. We met up in person once every 2 weeks. We also met online a couple of times a week to just work on stuff together and just kind of have a quick check-in with each other. It was so effective. It was so brilliant. And then I joined a paid mastermind later that year. I also was part of some online group courses, and then I made sort of biz besties out of that with other students who I really connected with and resonated with. And so as I got deeper and deeper into my business, the people that I looked to like be my litmus test of, well, how bad is this? Like, is this a big deal? Was actually more those biz besties. And that really gave a lot better perspective. And it was actually they were more reassuring to me than my audience, or those few people who did pick up on mistakes, or my mean virtual assistant who I'd fired by within a year I ended up like not working with her anymore. And because I realized that it was actually quite toxic for my self-esteem, and it wasn't actually, the business benefit to my business was not worth the damage that it did to my confidence and the way that I had started to sabotage my business growth. So we stopped working together. But I really do recommend that when things go wrong or something horrible happens to you in your business, look to those biz besties, because the other thing that can be really challenging is if you ask your partner or you say to your partner, oh my gosh, this has happened, everything's gone wrong, often they'll just want to fix it for you, or they'll start to get involved in being the manager of your business for you, or like trying to be your mentor. And that's actually not helpful either. And David, my partner, and I have conversations about this. And I think we've got a really good system with this now, where in the past, I would have gone straight to him and gone, oh, I've made this mistake, or this has gone out wrong, or, oh, I forgot to do this thing. And he would immediately be like, who from your team should you fire? Or, what do you need to do to fix this? And, and he would go into fix it mode. But I never went to him because I thought he was the best person to fix it. But that's just his default response when anyone brings him a problem, is he starts talking about answers and solutions and how to fix it, or who should be blamed and who needs to be fired, right? And I noticed this like very early in my business. And so we ended up, like, I came up with a thing where when I went to him with problems, I'd say, I don't need you to fix this. I just need to have a whinge about this. Can I just have a whinge about this with you and you not try and fix it? And he'd go, yep. And then I'd have a whinge about it. Or, which I think is far more healthy, is I don't take those things to him. I actually just send a DM to my group chat with my biz besties, or I send a DM to a business bestie that I have and say, oh my gosh, this is going on. This is so frustrating, or I can't believe I've done this wrong again, or I've made this mistake. I just need to like vent it out, because I think something about other people who are business owners is that like we don't try and dive in and fix things for you until we're sure that that's actually what you need from us. Like, I think we're just a bit better at the boundaries around that. And the more that you lean in and build those friendships and those business bestie networks and you build those relationships, the more that those people around you, like, they know what they want as a business owner. And so they can really reflect that. And I just think that they do a far better job. When I reach out to my biz besties and say, oh, like, I've got this thing happened and team members done this or whatever. I don't really do stuff about my team because my team never let me down. They're just amazing. But like, it might be, I've made this mistake, or, oh, this person's like a client's done this, or sometimes it'll be like this speaker has dropped out of doing this event that I was going to do, or, oh, my venue's done something, right? It's often like other businesses or audience members have done something, or, oh, this is blowing up over on my socials and I don't know what to do about it. When I go to my biz besties with it, they understand the context and they understand a lot more about what we need as business owners in that moment. And so they are far more likely to give me exactly what I need in that moment, which often is everything's going to be okay, a bit of perspective. Do you want some suggestions on how to sort it? Or do you want me to go over and comment and help you? Or, they're actually diving in and helping, but they're not just going like, here's how you should fix it. They're actually asking if you want help to fix it, or they're asking, what do you think you need right now? I just think business owners get that. I think maybe because we do a lot of personal development stuff as business owners. So strategy number 2 when something goes horribly wrong is to reach out to those biz besties and start to build that network if you don't have one. Come to some of my conferences and events if you need to build your biz bestie network, or come and join some of my programs because I'm very good at helping you find your biz besties. Just a little plug there. All right. Number 3 is focus on the good. For everything that's gone horribly wrong in my business, or every horrible thing that's happened, I've been able to find some good in it. I've been able to find a reason why this had to happen now. Even when earlier this year at the VIP implementation day that's at the end of conference, my back spasmed and seized up and I could not physically facilitate the implementation day that I was supposed to be facilitating solo for that day. there was a lot of good that came out of that experience. Now, there was some good in terms of my personal learning, some really deep and amazing insights about what I was doing in my business and how I was showing up, and some of my maybe personal energy leaks, but also really big insights for me about my lack of willingness to lean in to support, or my feelings of not being worthy of being helped and supported, some realizations and gratitude for, I ended up having 3 of my biz besties sweep in and take over for me so that I could just go and lie flat on my back and scream in pain. That was a really brilliant insight. Some ways that I'm going to actually change the way that they day runs, so it's not relying on just me alone and me, holding space for everyone in that space. Like, all these amazing good insights and lessons and things came out of it. Also, everyone wrote these amazing, gorgeous, beautiful messages for me on napkins that I couldn't read for the first month after conference because it just made me too emotional. And so it took me over a month to actually have the bravery to actually even read everyone's lovely notes, which also shows a bit of resistance to reading kind words, by the way. So yeah, there was just so much beauty that came out of that. And you would think that's huge. That's devastating. That's such a big, bad, horrible thing to happen in my business. But when I, upon reflection in hindsight, looked for the good, looked for what was the positive to come of this, I found it. And the same with having a very cruel virtual assistant in my second year of business. There was a lot of good that came from that. When we had a huge a fight, basically, an online fight explode in the heart-centered, soul-driven entrepreneurs community a couple of years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a free space and I'm here trying to break up this fight and these people are arguing with each other and it was big and it was hard and it distracted me from my own day for 3 hours solid, and it was huge, but actually there was a lot of good that came out of that for group boundaries, group guidelines, being clear on where I stood in terms of values and ethics and inclusion. It highlighted, I have an inclusion advisory board for the heart-centered community. And so it highlighted an area where I wasn't tapping into their expertise quite enough. And I probably had we weren't being as proactive is probably the best way to describe it. So we got a little bit more proactive with some of the things that we did with the group. It really was a really big up-leveling of the boundaries of the community, but also the level of inclusion and the focus on building a more diverse audience in there. And there's a bunch of really great benefits. So for every negative and bad thing, I'm not saying let's just bypass all the bad, but for every bad thing that happens for me, especially with the power of hindsight afterwards, looking back, if I take the time to really look for, what is the good that came of this? What are some of the benefits that came of this experience? I always find them. Now, I just want to quickly say, this is not about totally bypassing your experience or spiritual bypassing. I'm not saying, everything happens for a reason. Everything is manifested yourself. No, I'm not saying that at all. Bad things happen. And I think it's important that we are 100% honest about the lived experiences that we have. And we understand, I want to be 100% clear, it is not your fault if someone trolls you online. That is not your fault. You didn't invite that. You did not manifest that. That person is mean. And that you didn't deserve that. There is nothing that you can do that means that you deserve to have someone be mean to you online at all. Full stop, period. No further conversation needs to be entered into. What I am saying is that is a horrible experience, but one of the things that you can do to process that and also to move forward from that experience is to look for, is there any good that has come of this? That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying bypass all of the negative and just pretend it didn't happen. That's not who I am, nor my advice, because unprocessed horrible experiences lead to a bunch of stuff being stuffed down, and that expresses itself in other ways in our body and in our experiences. So let's not do that, and let's not buy into that whole spiritual bypassing stuff. That's not cool. All right. Number 4, what can you do when something horrible happens? Take the day off. Just check out. You're allowed to take the day off when bad stuff happens. You're allowed to decide, you know what? I need to step away from this. And whatever you need to do to close it down. If you've got like a bunch of like wild and horrible comments happening on a certain post, it goes viral in the wrong place or whatever, turn off comments. You can even lock your profile, right? Lock your profile for the day. Go and take the day off. We'll all be here when you're ready to come back. Your business will still be there when you come back. You're allowed to step away. You know, I think in this day and age, especially with online business stuff, people can be very demanding that like when something goes wrong or you've done something wrong or you've said something wrong, you must immediately rectify it and da-da-da. That's actually not helpful. Because if people want you to really understand, let's say you say something that's inadvertently non-inclusive, or you inadvertently say a phrase or a turn of phrase that might be ableist or it might be racist or sexist or something, and you didn't know, it was a genuine mistake. People in the online space can sometimes demand that we like immediately need to make a full apology and make the exact perfect apology and da-da-da-da-da. But actually, if people want you to learn from this, and if people genuinely want you to understand why this is harmful or why this is a negative thing for you to do or why this is problematic, and they really want you to do the work around actually digesting that and understanding and changing your behavior, that doesn't happen in the 5 minutes from discovering that this was something that was problematic. That's not actually possible. And so it is absolutely valid and legitimate for you to pop a little note and say, thank you to everyone who's brought this to my attention. I'm going to step away from social media for today to get some clarity and get some perspective and do some of that work and get some further understanding. Thank you so much. I will be back and I will make sure that I address this in the coming few days. And then you get the time and space to actually do that work. And then you get the time and space to actually process it and understand. 99% of the terrible apologies that make things worse and the terrible responses and the terrible ways that people handle being called out on something or having made mistakes or done something wrong, 99% of the ones that were handled poorly and ended up making it worse were done too quickly anyway. It was because there was actually no change. There was no shift. People were just saying the things that they thought that they needed to say in order to shut people down and stop people complaining. But is that actually what we want? No. The people in your audience who deeply value inclusion or deeply value, certain levels of human understanding, human to human compassion, understand that this type of work doesn't happen in mere minutes. This type of processing and understanding and self-education and learning takes a bit of time and effort. What they want to know is that the time and effort is going to be taken. So I don't care what the horrible thing is. I think that a valid and legitimate response is to take the day off. Take the day off. Give yourself that time and space to process, regardless of whether it's you that's done something horrible or something horrible is being done to you or something horrible is happening in your business, like everything's all gone wrong. There is a way for you to just take the day off. And you will often find that you are able to come back in a more meaningful way. You're able to respond in a more meaningful way. You're able to fix it in a more meaningful way. You're able to address it in a more meaningful way when you give yourself the time and space to actually think about it and get the advice and support and education that you might need, or get the help that you need, get the intervention that you need, get some understanding of what you are actually liable for here, right? So there are certain things that it's going to take some time for you to work that out. So give yourself the day off. You're allowed to take the day off. That's tip number 4, take the day off. And tip number 5 is just check in. And I've got a little free resource for you. I've made you a free present. Just check in. Is this just something that happens when you run a business? And is this something that it's just a rite of passage? So the freebie that I have for you is I've actually created a fun bingo card of 25 horrible things that are just a normal part of doing business. So on there, we've got things like someone has asked you for a refund. Someone has given you a negative review. Someone has replied to an email pointing out a mistake that you made in an email, right? Some of these things, when they happen the first time, you think, oh my gosh, like, oh, it's so horrible, and you mourn that it's happened. But actually, when you understand that this is something that it was inevitable, it happens to every single business owner. Well, once it happens for the first time, you can kind of tick it off and go, woohoo, I've done it. That thing's happened to me. Yay. I'm a legit business owner now. Someone copies something of yours. You suspect someone of being a copycat of a piece of your work. It's going to happen, right? Now, you can sit and live in fear of someone copying your work. And I've seen a lot of people who don't actually ever move on from the early stages of their business because they are so afraid of someone copying something of theirs. And I just think if you just accepted that someone's going to copy something of yours, and yes, I'm not saying like completely devalue your intellectual property and just let people get away with everything, but like, does it really matter that someone else's ebook has the exact same title as yours? Like, in the grand scheme of things, like that's going to happen. That's going to happen because someone uses AI or someone comes up with the exact same title as you on the other side of the world without actually ever having seen your work, right? It's going to happen. And so when you understand and accept, you're going to have some copycats out there, but you just get on with being your unique self and sharing all the things that you want to say and like being a prolific content creator. They'll always be a step behind you. I have people who I know, like a bunch of their content, a bunch of their resources is actually just their version of something of mine, but they'll never be me. And my audience can very clearly often see their thing as a copy of my thing, especially my like hottest audience and people who've been around for a while. But like at the end of the day, if out of like the 100 people who Googled that topic for the day, 50% went to that person and 50% went to me, I just trust that the good 50% came to me, right? Like if you're listening to this podcast, you're part of the good ones. And so like I'm actually not interested in investing a lot of time focusing on people who are going to copy me and worrying about it because number one, the more I look for it, the more I'll see it and I'll start suspecting people who haven't actually copied me. It's just that there's a lot of overlap between the way that we think and what we say. And that's just reasonable to expect in a world with billions and billions of people. And number two, the more that I'm focused on people might copy this when I'm creating new stuff, like the less stuff I'll create, but also the more I then feel this need for it to be unique and different and like wildly different from anything that anyone else has created before and da-da-da. And I end up tying myself up in knots and I don't make as high quality or effective of a product or resource because I'm actually focused on the wrong person. I'm focused on the person who might copy this instead of being focused on the person who needs this. And when they do it, they'll actually then do the next thing and then they'll become a paying client. And then they're actually like my absolute ideal client. So I don't want to be focused on the wrong people. Okay. So that is all included in the rites of passage bingo card, and your instructions on how to grab that are over with the show notes of today's episode at tashcorbin.com/432. So that's it for day 2 of Tashmas. You've got that bingo card as your free gift. And hopefully this has really helped you to feel prepared for when horrible things happen for you in business. And also perhaps identify where you might need to fill some gaps in your readiness and preparation for those horrible things. So it might just help you to get a little bit more understanding of the perspective. And it might also help you to see that you need to build that biz bestie network. Time to stop asking your partner or your mum or the inappropriate people for support or telling them about what's going wrong in your business because they're not actually helping you in a way that's actually going to move you forward. It's not actually the help that you're looking for. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode. Make sure you go and grab everything at tashcorbin.com/432. Thanks for joining me for day 2 of Tashmas. I'll see you tomorrow. back here on the podcast for day 3. And until then, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now.